These lower league teams played European football. Teams outside the top flight usually get so little attention that many of their stories go unnoticed and uncelebrated. Many of these stories involve unlikely European adventures. The most well-known amongst them is Wigan's 2013-14 Europa League campaign. After defeating Manchester City in the final of the FA Cup in 2013, Wigan were relegated just 3 days later. Plucked from the championship and placed in a group with Rubin Kazan, Maribor and Zulte Waregem, the Latics only managed 5 points, placing them last. Portsmouth's tumultuous story in the late 2000s saw them reach the 2010 FA Cup final where they lost to Chelsea. Since the London club had already qualified for the Champions League, Portsmouth were to receive a place in next season's Europa League, but were denied a license due to their financial issues. 1 year later, Birmingham City won the League Cup against Arsenal, only to go down at the end of the season. They nearly made it out of their group containing Club Brugge, Braga and Maribor, missing out on the Europa League round of 32 by just 1 point. Long before the achievements mentioned before, Sunderland experienced their only European season to date from the second tier of English football in 1974. While still in the second tier, they beat Don Revie's Leeds of all teams and won the previous season's FA Cup. They would be eliminated from the second round in the Cup Winners' Cup by Sporting. Our last English inclusion is the most hated club in England, or at least that's what their fans maintain. Millwall became the first team outside the Premier League to play an FA Cup final in 2004, which they lost to Manchester United in a game where the Blues were missing 16 players due to suspension or injury. Since United would already play in next season's Champions League, Millwall received a spot in the UEFA Cup qualifiers, but Ferencváros beat them in the first round. And now on to Germany, where Alemannia Aachen lost the 2004 DFB Pokal final to Werder Bremen. Since the Werderaner already qualified for the Champions League, Alemannia received a UEFA Cup spot. They gave a great account of themselves despite being a second-tier side reaching the round of 32. With most of the stories so far unfolding in similar ways, you might be wondering, which second-tier teams came the farthest in European competition? Well, 2 of them managed to reach the semi-finals, both in the Cup Winners' Cup. Cardiff were regulars both in the lower tiers of English football and in Europe, since the Welsh Cup awarded a spot in the Cup Winners' Cup. In the 1967-68 season, they dispatched Shamrock Rovers, NAC Breda and Torpedo Moscow to play Hamburg in the semis. The German Giants did not have an easy time, the tie being decided by just 1 goal. Exactly 10 years later, Atalanta, who managed to reach the Coppa Italia final the previous season, also qualified for the Cup Winners' Cup, courtesy of the fact that Napoli were Scudetto winners and would head to the European Cup. After easy ties against Welsh side Merthyr Tydfil, and I'm sorry for the pronunciation, and Ofi Crete in the quarters, they lined up against Sporting. Undaunted, Ladea won 3-1 on aggregate, but KV Mechelen, who beat Ajax in the final, proved too much for the Italians. So far, the UEFA Cup, the Europa League and the Cup Winners' Cup are covered. But what about the Champions League? Surely, this seems impossible, as the European Cup only allowed the league winners or last season's champions, and the Champions League is usually reserved for the top teams and the winners of the previous year. Well, one of these winners, the first one in the modern Champions League in fact, nearly had this honor. After winning the 1993 edition, Marseille were relegated due to a bribery scandal, and since UEFA did not want me to have a grand finale for my list, they disqualified the French champions for the 1994 season. Let me know in the comments which other second tier teams played in Europe, and if you liked the video, consider following me for more content like this.